human effort trying to fulfill God's plan and promise. And God had said, I'm going to do this. And that's one of the things that we have to be careful of. God will give you a vision. And when he gives you that vision, you get excited about that vision. But then he wants to know, now you're going to trust me to supernaturally fulfill the vision, or you're going to take the thing up in your own hands and try in your own strength and energy to bring it to pass. Another thing that I believe is the fact that technology hadn't advanced to where it is today. So we don't have a picture, a physical picture of what Jesus looked like. What we have is a picture, but it's not physical. We have a picture of the person, the character. We have a picture that everybody can emulate. You don't have to be black or white or red or yellow, because that's how Jesus was presented. But you can be a person who is emulating his love for the Father, his love for fellow man, his integrity, his honesty, his determination to live above sin. These are the kinds of things God wants us to mimic, to emulate, and not get caught up in pride because he was black and I'm black. Or he was white and I'm white. Yeah. So, the image that we are to emulate. Separation. Think about what happens when we come to physical death. Separation takes place. Our souls separate from our bodies. The body goes back to the dust of the earth from whence it came. And depending upon our decisions concerning Jesus Christ, we go to heaven or hell. Separation occurs. However, long before physical death, we experience spiritual death. Spiritual death is separation from God. At the moment we give in to sin, we find ourselves separated from God. He distances himself from us. How can a holy, righteous God embrace that which is unholy and unrighteous? Think about that.
So basically, your childhood and formative years was a mixture of positives and negatives. Would you give our viewers a snapshot of those years? Bring us right up to the point when your life was obviously overflowing with success.
All right, thank you for the question. I was born and raised in Washington, D.C., 1937. Raised by my grandmother and grandfather. My mother and father became alcoholics, and they both split, and they divorced, and they abandoned us. They left us to be with my grandmother and grandfather. We were very poor. My grandmother and grandfather were both on Social Security. They were not able to provide for us. I never remember having any new clothes. I remember my grandmother bending over the wash tub to wash our clothes with a scrub board. And she used a soap they called Octagon soap. And she never was able to do anything for us until actually I was able to go out and get a job serving newspapers in order to purchase a used washing machine for her, a tabletop machine. And I purchased it from the Goodwill. Didn't have a bicycle. The toys that we played with, usually I made those toys. Skateboard, got some pieces of wood and nailed them together and nailed some skates to the bottom of them, and we went out skating. I didn't have a bicycle until, again, I was old enough to go out and earn enough money to buy a used bicycle. I had determined that I was going to break out of poverty, learned how to sing, and at the age of 12 I began to sing publicly, and really determined that I was going to go into show business, and wound up going to school with Marvin Gaye, and we became real good friends. We would compete against one another in high school, and I'd get at one end of the hall with my doo-wop boys, he'd get at the other end with his, and we would see who could draw the biggest crowd of girls. We became real good friends. After school, I went into show business. I worked all up and down the eastern seaboard, appeared with the Four Tops, Stevie Wonder and the Supremes, sang at the Apollo Theater, Baby Grand, Small's Paradise in New York. Show business became my life. Meanwhile, Marvin Gaye married Berry Gordy's sister, founder of Motown, and they were headquartered in Detroit. It was difficult, if not impossible, to get a break in show business living in Washington, D.C. And so I had a cousin that had invited me to come to Flint, Michigan. And I said, okay, I'll go to Flint and get another start. Detroit is only an hour away. I knew Marvin could get an audition for me, and he did. And Motown offered me a contract, but at that time they were signing up artists, putting them on the shelf. I didn't want to sit on the shelf. And so I didn't accept the contract. Meanwhile, there was a man building a studio in a suburb of Flint and asked me if I would tie in with him and be in on the ground floor of something potentially huge. And I said, yeah, let's do it. And so I started working with the musicians that would come in while he worked on the engineering. Their group came in and I could not help them to get to sing the song that they wanted to sing well enough to record it. So they said, why don't you sing it for us? I said, okay, if I sing it for you, who's going to sing it for you if you have to go out and perform it? They said, well, you just have to go out and perform it. I said, okay, let's do it. And the name of the song was I Don't Like to Lose.
Please, share with us now the circumstances leading to your initial salvation.
Wow, the circumstances leading to how salvation was initiated in my life. I was sitting there in the basement of 205 Crosby Street, building that no longer exists now. It's torn down back in Flint, Michigan. And that's where I had started to pray and ask God for direction. Give me some direction. And when he led me to where Jesus was preaching the Sermon on the Mount, and how I had not put faith in him like the other forms of life that he has created, and how they trust him to sustain them, but I was not trusting him to sustain me. At that point, I stopped reading the passage there in Matthew 5 that he had led me to. and I said, Lord, you're right. I've always believed in your existence. But my faith has been in me. Because I say what I'm going to do, when I'm going to do, where I'm going to do, how I'm going to do. I said, Lord, from this moment forward, I'm putting my faith in you. You take my life and you run it. And you make of me what you'd have me to be. At that point, I pictured myself driving down the highway of life. And I could see myself behind the wheel. I'm going where I want to go, when I want to go, how I want to go. And I recognize, because I'm always running off into dead ends or down into ditches, I'm recognizing that I'm not doing a good job of running this thing. I need to turn the wheel over to Jesus. And so I pictured myself pulling over to a stop, throwing open the door to the driver's seat, inviting Jesus to come in. I pictured him getting into the driver's seat, closing the door, and locking it. I slid over into the passenger seat, and I said, Lord, I don't want any more to do with running my life. I don't even want one of those spare wheels over here on my side like they have in driver's ed. Jesus took the wheel, and he's been in the driver's seat of my life ever since. That was the turning point. But I want to quickly say that I haven't been the perfect passenger, because there have been times when, even though he was in the driver's seat, he didn't want to turn where I wanted to turn, or stop, or slow down, or speed up. And I would say, well, now wait a minute, Lord. Look, I was kind of hoping that we would go around it. Can I have the wheel there for a minute? And you know what I've learned? That he won't fight you for the wheel. He let me have the wheel. And so I, thank you, Lord. And I would go on, and before long, boom, I'm down in another ditch or running into another dead end. And before long, I'm giving, Lord, please take it back. Please take back the controls. And so the habit of my life, since that time that I invited him to take the wheel, the habit of my life has been learning how to keep my hands off the wheel and leave the driving to him. And I've learned how to go for longer and longer periods of time without grabbing the wheel. And what I've come to recognize is that's how we grow in our faith. That's where I am today.